The blood-red sunset painted the dusty horizon of Georgetown, Colorado, as Olivia Lancaster clutched her tattered shawl tighter around her trembling shoulders. April 1875 brought unusually bitter winds to the mining town nestled in the Rocky Mountains, but it wasn't just the cold that made her shiver. The bank foreclosure notice in her pocket weighed heavier than any gold nugget the town's miners ever dreamed of finding. "Final notice," the banker had said with cold eyes that morning. 3 days, Miss Lancaster, not a minute more." Olivia's steps faltered as she approached her small homestead at the edge of town. The modest cabin her father had built with his own hands before the consumption took him just 6 months ago now faced the same fate as so many other failed dreams in this unforgiving territory. The mortgage payments had piled up faster than the spring snowmelt. At 22, Olivia had tried everything, taking in mending, selling eggs from her 3 remaining chickens, even cleaning at the Silver Dollar Saloon, though that job had ended when the owner's wife caught him looking at Olivia with intentions that made her skin crawl. Inside the cabin, she lit the single oil lamp and surveyed what remained of her life, the few sticks of furniture. Her mother's china teacup, the only one not sold, her father's worn Bible, nothing of value remained. A sharp knock at the door startled her. Visitors were rare, especially after dark. "Who is it?" she called, voice steady despite her racing heart. "Lucas Donovan, madam." "Your neighbor from the north property?" Olivia hesitated. She knew of Lucas Donovan, most everyone in Georgetown did, but they'd never spoken. He'd arrived about a year ago, bought the old Wilcox place, and kept mostly to himself. People said he was a former Texas Ranger who'd grown tired of chasing outlaws. Others claimed he'd been an outlaw himself. All Olivia knew for certain was that he raised fine horses and rarely came to town. She opened the door cautiously. The man who stood on her porch removed his hat immediately, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. His face was tanned and weathered, with lines around his eyes that spoke of long days under harsh sun. He wasn't classically handsome, but there was something compelling in his steady gaze. "Evening, Miss Lancaster," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "Sorry to disturb you after nightfall. What can I do for you, Mr. Donovan?" He shifted slightly, seemingly uncomfortable. "I was in town today. Overheard something at the Mercantile about your place here." His eyes, a surprising shade of green in his sun-darkened face, met hers directly. "Heard the bank's looking to foreclose." Olivia stiffened. "My financial matters aren't the town's business." "No, madam, they're not," he agreed quickly. "But I've been meaning to speak with you about something else entirely, and this seemed like it might be relevant timing." She waited, suspicious but curious. "I need help, Miss Lancaster. My horse breeding business is growing, and I need someone to keep my books, handle correspondence, and help manage the place. My handwriting is terrible, and numbers make my head spin." He offered a slight, self-deprecating smile. "I understand you were a school teacher back east before coming here." Olivia nodded slowly. "In Pennsylvania before my father fell ill. I can pay a fair wage, and there's a small cabin on my property where you could stay. It's nothing fancy, but it's sound." He paused. "If you're interested, that is." Suspicion flared. Women in desperate straits often received such offers in frontier towns. Reading her expression, Lucas held up his hands. "It's a proper employment offer, Miss Lancaster. Nothing untoward, you'd have your privacy. I'm just a man who needs help running his business, and you're a woman who knows figures and letters. Simple as that." Olivia studied him. Despite his imposing height and the pistol strapped to his hip, standard equipment for any man in the territory, there was nothing threatening in his manner. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Donovan, but I can't just abandon my home." Even as she said it, Olivia knew it was a hollow protest. In 3 days, it wouldn't be her home anyway. "With respect, Miss Lancaster, from what I understand, the bank won't give you a choice soon." His words were blunt but not unkind. "My offer stands whether you decide tonight or tomorrow. Think on it." After he left, Olivia sank onto her father's old rocking chair. Pride told her to refuse, to find another way, but reality whispered harsher truths. She had nowhere to go, no family. Barely enough money for a stage ticket out of town, and no destination if she took it. The next morning, Olivia rose with the sun. She'd barely slept, but her decision was made. She packed her few belongings into her father's old trunk and walked to the bank. Mr. Whitaker, the bank manager, didn't bother hiding his surprise when she requested to settle her account. "You found the funds, Miss Lancaster?" "I'm selling the property, Mr. Whitaker, today to clear the debt." His eyebrows rose. "And who's the buyer?" "Not that I'm questioning your word, but—" "Lucas Donovan." The banker's expression shifted immediately. "I see. Well, if Mr. Donovan is involved, I suppose we can proceed." He shuffled some papers. "He's a man of his word by all accounts, unusual in these parts." By noon, Olivia had signed away her family home. The price barely covered the mortgage, with just enough left for her to feel she hadn't completely surrendered everything. Lucas waited outside with a wagon for her trunk. He didn't speak much as they drove north out of town, seeming to understand that each turn of the wheels took her further from everything familiar. His property sprawled across a picturesque valley flanked by pine-covered hills. A sturdy log house sat centrally, with a large barn and several corrals containing horses more magnificent than any Olivia had seen before. Their coats gleamed in the afternoon sun, bays, blacks and chestnuts with white blazes down their faces. "Quarter horses," Lucas explained, following her gaze. "Best cow horses in the West. I breed them for ranchers from here to Texas." The cabin he'd mentioned sat about 100 yards from the main house, partially sheltered by cottonwood trees. It was indeed small, just one room with a stone fireplace, but solidly built and clean. A bed with a fresh straw mattress occupied one corner. A table with 2 chairs stood under the window. Simple shelves lined one wall. "It's not much," Lucas said, setting down her trunk. "But it's yours for as long as you work here. I had Mrs. Thornton from town come out yesterday to ready it." Olivia nodded, overwhelmed by the day's events. "When would you like me to start work?" "Tomorrow is soon enough. Get settled today." He handed her a key. "There's food in the cupboard and the well is just behind the main house. If you need anything else, just ask." He turned to leave but paused at the door. "Miss Lancaster, I want to be clear about something. I didn't buy your property to pressure you into this arrangement. The offer of employment stands separate from that transaction. If you decide this isn't suitable, I'll help you find something else." "Why did you buy it then?" Olivia asked. "I've had my eye on that parcel for a while. It adjoins my southern pasture, has good water access." His explanation was practical, businesslike. The timing was coincidental, though admittedly convenient. After he left, Olivia unpacked her few possessions. The cabin, though sparse, was more comfortable than she'd expected. The fireplace drew well, warming the small space quickly. The bed linens smelled of sunshine and lye soap. On the table sat a loaf of bread, cheese, and a jar of preserved peaches. As night fell, Olivia sat by the fire, trying to make sense of the whirlwind day. She had lost her home but gained shelter, lost independence but found employment. Every reasonable measure said she should be grateful, yet a hollow ache persisted. Her first days at the Donovan ranch established a routine. Mornings, she organized Lucas's chaotic account books in a small office adjacent to the main house. Afternoons, she wrote correspondence to buyers and suppliers, her neat handwriting replacing his barely legible scrawl. Lucas was a fair employer, neither hovering nor abandoning her to flounder. He answered questions directly and expressed genuine appreciation for her work. One morning, about 2 weeks after her arrival, Olivia was sorting through receipts when she came across bills of sale for her father's property dating back several months. They showed Lucas had been purchasing adjacent parcels systematically, creating a contiguous stretch of land. "You've been planning this for some time," she said when he came in for lunch. She kept her tone neutral, pushing the papers toward him. Lucas didn't pretend not to understand. "Yes, your father's land has the best access to Clear Creek. I need that water for the herd I'm bringing up from Texas next month. So the job offer was just to ease your conscience about taking my home," he frowned. "No, the job offer was because I genuinely needed help and you're qualified. The property purchase was business." He sat across from her. "Miss Lancaster, I understand you're still adjusting to changed circumstances, but I've been straight with you from the start." Olivia knew he was right, which only irritated her further. "Yes, you have. I apologize for suggesting otherwise." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Accepted. Now would you like some coffee? I just made a fresh pot." The tension eased and they returned to their work, but something had shifted. Olivia began to see Lucas not just as her employer, but as someone navigating his own path in this difficult country. She noticed how he worked alongside his ranch hands, never asking them to do anything he wouldn't. How he took time with each horse, speaking softly and moving deliberately. How the lines around his eyes deepened when he smiled, which happened more often than she'd initially thought. Spring melted fully into summer. Olivia's world expanded beyond ledgers and letters. She began helping with the horses, discovering an affinity for the gentle giants that surprised both her and Lucas. "You have a gift," he told her one evening as they finished the day's work. "That chestnut mare won't let anyone near her foal except you and me." "She just needed patience," Olivia said, but she couldn't help feeling pleased. They started taking supper together most evenings, either at the main house or at her cabin. Lucas proved to be a decent cook, though his repertoire was limited to hearty stews and cornbread. Olivia contributed by making pies from wild berries she gathered along the creek. Their conversations grew deeper as the summer nights lengthened. Lucas spoke of his years as a ranger, the violence he'd witnessed and sometimes participated in, his eventual disillusionment. "I decided I wanted to create something instead of just enforcing order," he explained one night as they sat on her porch, watching lightning flicker over distant mountains. "Horses seemed right. They don't care about your past, just how you treat them now." In turn, Olivia shared stories of her childhood in Pennsylvania, her brief teaching career, her father's dreams of striking it rich in the Colorado mines. "He never did find that big strike he was hoping for," she said wistfully. "But he loved it here, said the mountains spoke to him." Lucas nodded. "They have that effect." He looked at her thoughtfully. "Do they speak to you as well?" The question caught her off guard. I'm not sure. I've been so focused on surviving that I haven't really listened." "You should. Best conversations you'll ever have." The easy camaraderie between them began to shift as summer progressed. Olivia found herself watching Lucas when he wasn't looking, the way his hands moved confidently over a horse's flanks, how he pushed his hat back when deep in thought. Sometimes she caught him watching her too, his expression unreadable. In late July, Lucas announced he needed to travel to Denver for business. "I'll be gone about a week," he told her. "Think you can manage things here with the boys?" By the boys, he meant the 3 ranch hands who helped with the horses and cattle. "We'll be fine," Olivia assured him, ignoring the unexpected pang she felt at the thought of his absence. The weeks stretched interminably. Olivia threw herself into work, taking inventory of supplies, cleaning the office, even helping muck out stalls, anything to keep busy. The ranch hands, respectful men who'd always treated her with courtesy, seemed amused by her sudden burst of energy. "Miss Lancaster," said Tom, the oldest of the 3, "you're gonna wear out those brooms before the boss gets back." She laughed but didn't slow down. Something restless had taken hold of her, something she wasn't ready to examine too closely. When Lucas returned, he brought supplies, mail, and a small package wrapped in brown paper. "For you," he said simply, handing it to Olivia as they stood in the yard. Inside was a book, a collection of poetry by Emily Dickinson. Olivia looked up in surprise. "You mentioned once that you missed reading," Lucas explained, suddenly looking uncertain. "The bookseller recommended this." The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her deeply. "Thank you, it's perfect." That evening, as they shared supper at the main house, Lucas seemed distracted. He picked at his food and kept glancing at her, then away. "Is everything all right?" Olivia finally asked. "Did something happen in Denver?" He set down his fork. "Yes, no, I mean," he took a breath. "I've been offered a contract to supply horses to Fort Collins. It would mean a significant expansion, more breeding stock, more hands, more—" He hesitated. "More paperwork," Olivia suggested with a smile, "more everything." His eyes met hers directly. "It's a good opportunity, but I wouldn't make the decision without discussing it with you first." "With me? Why?" "Because it affects you too. Your position here would change. There'd be more responsibility, more complexity." He paused. "And because I value your judgment." Something warm unfurled in Olivia's chest. "I think you should take the contract. You've built something remarkable here already. Why not let it grow?" Relief and something else flickered across his face. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." The new contract changed life at the ranch dramatically. More horses arrived. 2 new hands were hired. A proper office was built adjacent to the main house. Olivia found herself managing correspondence with military officials, organizing breeding records, and even negotiating with suppliers. Through it all, her relationship with Lucas continued to evolve. They became true partners in the business, consulting each other on decisions, sharing triumphs and setbacks. Yet neither acknowledged the increasing tension that hummed between them when they worked close together, or the way their eyes lingered when they thought the other wasn't looking. August brought scorching heat and violent thunderstorms. One night, lightning struck a tree near the corrals, spooking the horses. Lucas and the hands rushed out to calm them and check for fire. Olivia grabbed lanterns and followed. Rain poured down as she helped secure gates and soothe frightened animals. In the chaos, she didn't see the young colt that broke free until it was almost upon her. She jumped aside but slipped in the mud, falling hard. Strong arms lifted her before she could register what had happened. Lucas carried her through the downpour to the main house, his expression tight with concern. "I'm fine," she protested as he set her gently on the sofa. "Just muddy." "You're bleeding," he countered, pointing to a gash on her arm. He fetched his medical kit, a necessity on any ranch, and carefully cleaned and bandaged the wound. His touch was gentle, but Olivia was acutely aware of his proximity, of the rain dripping from his hair onto his shoulders, of the way his shirt clung to his chest. "Thank you," she said softly when he finished. He didn't move away. "Olivia." It was the first time he'd used her given name. "I thought when I saw you fall," he stopped, seemingly unable to continue. She reached out tentatively, touching his hand. "I'm really all right." His fingers closed around hers. For a moment they stayed that way, the only sound the rain hammering on the roof and the occasional rumble of thunder. Then Lucas stood abruptly. "You should change into dry clothes. I'll check on the horses again." Before Olivia could respond, he was gone, leaving her confused and strangely disappointed. The next morning brought clear skies but lingering awkwardness. Lucas was polite but distant, burying himself in work. Olivia followed his lead, focusing on tasks that kept them in separate parts of the ranch. This uneasy détente might have continued indefinitely if not for a letter that arrived the following week. It was addressed to Olivia from a law firm in Denver. "My father had mining shares," she explained to Lucas after reading it. "Apparently they've finally paid a dividend." She laughed softly, disbelievingly. "It's not a fortune, but it's substantial." Lucas smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "That's wonderful news." "Your father would be pleased." "Yes, he would." Olivia hesitated. "It changes things." "How so?" "I could buy a place of my own now, maybe even start a small business in town." Even as she said it, Olivia realized she had no desire to leave the ranch to leave Lucas. His expression shuddered. "Of course, you never intended to stay here permanently. This was just a necessity until something better came along." "That's not what I meant." But Lucas was already striding away, calling to one of the hands about a fence that needed repair. For several days, they circled each other cautiously. Lucas threw himself into physical labor, often working from dawn until well after dusk. Olivia continued her duties efficiently, but found no joy in them anymore. The impasse broke unexpectedly when a severe summer storm swept through the valley. Olivia was in her cabin when she heard a tremendous crash. Looking out, she saw that the barn roof had partially collapsed under the weight of the water. Without thinking, she ran through the deluge toward the barn. Lucas and the hands were already there, trying to move horses to safety. "The mare's foaling," Lucas shouted when he saw her. In the back stall, Olivia pushed through fallen timbers to reach the frightened animal. The chestnut mare lay on her side, sides heaving, clearly in distress. Olivia knelt beside her, murmuring soothingly. For the next hour, she worked alongside Lucas to deliver the foal while the hands secured the rest of the structure. When the tiny black colt finally emerged, both Olivia and Lucas were soaked with rain and sweat, exhausted but triumphant. "We did it," she said, watching the wobbly foal take its first steps. Lucas looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in days. "We make a good team." "Yes," she agreed softly. "We do." They stared at each other across the newborn foal, something unspoken passing between them. Then Lucas cleared his throat. "Olivia, I need to say something. About your inheritance, I don't want to leave," she interrupted. "I never did, I just thought. I thought you might want me to go now that I don't need the job as desperately." Confusion crossed his face. "Want you to go?" Olivia, I've been half out of my mind thinking about you leaving. This ranch, he gestured around them. It's not the same without you, it never would be. Hope bloomed in her chest. What are you saying, Lucas? He stepped closer, reaching for her hand. I'm saying that somewhere along the way you became essential, not just to the ranch, but to me. His voice dropped. I'm saying I love you, Olivia Lancaster, and the thought of you leaving tears me apart. Joy surged through her, bright and overwhelming. I love you too, I think I have for months. His smile then was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He pulled her close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened with all the passion they'd been holding back. When they finally parted, both breathless, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered. Not as my employee, as my partner, in everything. Are you proposing, Lucas Donovan? Olivia asked, her heart racing, inelegantly, covered in mud and horse, but yes. He looked suddenly uncertain. Is that something you might consider? She answered by kissing him again, pouring all her feelings into it. Yes, she said when they broke apart. Yes to all of it. The wedding took place in early September with the mountains ablaze in autumn gold. It was a simple affair, just a small gathering at the ranch with the local minister, a few neighbors, and the hands who'd become like family. Olivia wore a new blue dress ordered from Denver and carried wildflowers gathered from the meadow. Lucas couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked toward him, his expression a mixture of awe and deep happiness. They exchanged vows under the cottonwood trees, promising to cherish and support each other through whatever life brought their way. The celebration afterward was joyful but modest, a feast prepared by the women from neighboring ranches, music from a fiddle player in town, and dancing that lasted until twilight. As the last guests departed, Lucas took Olivia's hand. Mrs. Donovan, he said, testing the name with evident pleasure. Shall we go home? Home was now the main house, their belongings mingled as naturally as their lives had become. The small cabin would soon be converted into an expanded office for their growing business. Later that night, as they lay wrapped in each other's arms, Olivia marveled at how completely her life had transformed in just a few months. From desperate circumstances to profound happiness, from isolation to belonging. What are you thinking about? Lucas asked, trailing his fingers along her bare shoulder. About everything that brought me here, to you. She nestled closer against his chest. If the bank hadn't foreclosed, I would have found another way to meet you, he said with conviction. Some things are meant to be, Olivia. We're one of them. The years that followed proved him right. Together, they built the Donovan Horse Ranch into one of the most respected breeding operations in Colorado. Lucas's understanding of horses, combined with Olivia's head for business, created a partnership that flourished beyond either's individual dreams. They faced challenges, of course. The harsh winter of 1877 nearly devastated their herd. A fire in 1880 destroyed the original barn, though miraculously spared the horses. Through each trial, they drew strength from each other, their bond deepening with shared struggle and triumph. Their family grew as well. Their first child, a son they named James after Olivia's father, was born in the spring of 1877. A daughter, Elizabeth, followed 2 years later. By 1884, they had 4 children, filling the expanded ranch house with laughter and energy. Olivia found motherhood suited her as naturally as ranch life had. She taught the children at home, instilling in them her love of books along with practical knowledge of horses and the land. Lucas proved to be a tender, patient father who delighted in teaching his children to ride almost before they could walk. The mining shares that had brought Olivia her unexpected inheritance continued to pay dividends, providing capital for ranch expansions and security during lean years. Olivia sometimes wondered what her father would think of how his investment had been used not for more mining ventures, but for building a legacy of a different kind. He'd be proud, Lucas assured her when she voiced this thought on the 10th anniversary of her father's passing. You've honored his memory by creating something lasting. By 1890, Georgetown had grown from a rough mining settlement into a proper town, though still small by Eastern standards. The Donovan name carried weight throughout the region, not just for their horses but for their fair dealings and community involvement. Olivia, now in her late 30s, had established a small library in town using books purchased with her own funds. Lucas served occasionally as a deputy when the sheriff needed assistance, drawing on his ranger experience only when absolutely necessary. Their lives had settled into a rhythm as predictable as the seasons, yet never dull. Each day brought its own challenges and joys, from breaking a particularly stubborn colt to watching their children master new skills. One crisp fall evening in 1893, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains, Lucas took Olivia's hand. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Coming here with me that day, building all this instead of using your inheritance to start over somewhere else." Olivia looked at him with surprise. "Never, not for a single moment." She squeezed his hand. "Why would you ask such a thing?" Lucas shrugged, a hint of vulnerability showing through his usual confidence. "Sometimes I wonder if you might have wanted more, a life in the city perhaps, more refinement than I could ever provide." "Lucas Donovan," she said firmly, turning to face him fully. "The life we've built together is more than I ever dreamed possible. It's not about refinement or location, it's about love, partnership, and purpose." She touched his face gently. "And I found all of that with you." He caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. "Even after all these years, you still humble me, Olivia," she smiled. "Good. Someone needs to keep you grounded when all those army officers and wealthy ranchers are praising your horses." He laughed, the momentary doubt vanishing. "Come here," he said, pulling her closer. Despite approaching 50, Lucas remained strong, his body hardened by years of physical work. The silver threading through his dark hair only made him more distinguished in Olivia's eyes. They sat together as the last light faded from the sky, comfortable in the silence that comes from years of shared understanding. Below them, the ranch spread out the sturdy buildings, the corrals filled with horses, the bunkhouse where their expanded crew of hands lived, the small schoolhouse they'd built for their children and those of their workers. "We should invite everyone for Thanksgiving this year," Olivia said suddenly. "All the hands and their families, maybe some folks from town who don't have anywhere to go." Lucas nodded. "Whatever you want, though we might need to add on to the dining room at this rate. James and the boys could help build the tables. It would be good for them." Their eldest, now 16, had his father's way with tools and building. They continued planning as the stars emerged, their conversation flowing easily between practical matters and deeper reflections. This was the heart of their partnership, the ability to move from business to family to personal concerns with seamless understanding. Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Lucas pulled Olivia into his arms. "I was thinking about that first night," he said softly. "When I came to your cabin with my awkward job offer." "You weren't awkward," she protested, "just direct." "I was terrified you'd slam the door in my face," he chuckled. "I'd watched you in town for months, you know, too cowardly to introduce myself properly." This was news to Olivia. "You had." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" he shrugged. "Pride maybe, or fear of rejection, but when I heard about the foreclosure I knew I had to act. Couldn't bear the thought of you leaving Georgetown." "So your story about needing help with the books was absolutely true," he assured her. "But not the whole truth. I wanted you near, Olivia. The rest I figured I'd sort out as we went along." She laughed and shook her head. "Lucas Donovan, man of action and secret schemes. Only when it matters most." He kissed her deeply. "And nothing ever mattered more than you." The following spring brought changes to the Donovan ranch. Their eldest daughter became engaged to the son of a neighboring rancher. James announced his intention to study veterinary medicine in Denver, with plans to return and apply his knowledge to the family business. The two younger children continued to thrive, showing aptitudes that both delighted and occasionally confounded their parents. Through it all, Lucas and Olivia remained each other's anchors. Their partnership had weathered nearly 2 decades, growing stronger with each challenge overcome, each joy shared. The passion that had surprised them both in those early days had matured into something deeper, yet no less powerful, a connection that sustained them through even the hardest times. One evening in May, a telegram arrived from Denver. Lucas's sister Alina, whom he hadn't seen in many years due to a family estrangement, was gravely ill. She asked to see him before the end. "You should go," Olivia said immediately, seeing the conflict in his eyes. "Make peace while you can." "Come with me," he urged. "I need you there." The journey to Denver was somber. Lucas spoke little, lost in memories of his complicated relationship with his only sibling. Olivia gave him space to process but stayed close, her presence a silent comfort. Lucas Donovan Wright was barely recognizable in her sicked, wasted by the illness that had consumed her. But her eyes, the same striking green as her brother's, brightened when Lucas entered her room. "You came," she whispered, reaching for his hand. "Of course I came, Ellie." His voice was gruff with emotion. Olivia stepped back, allowing them privacy for their reconciliation. From what she could gather, their estrangement had stemmed from Alina's marriage to a man Lucas considered dishonorable, a judgment that proved correct when the man abandoned Alina years later, leaving her destitute. Pride and hurt had kept the siblings apart, but as death approached, those old wounds seemed suddenly insignificant. Lucas stayed by Alina's bedside for 3 days, reminiscing about their childhood, asking and offering forgiveness, making peace. When Alina passed quietly on the 4th day, Lucas grieved not just for his sister, but for the years they'd lost to stubbornness. "Don't ever let me be that foolish again," he told Olivia as they rode the train back to Georgetown. "Promise me you won't let pride keep me from the people I love." "I promise," she said, holding his hand tightly. "Though you've grown wiser with age, I think." "Only because you've taught me," he replied. "You and the children and this life we've built." The experience with Alina changed something in Lucas. He became more deliberate about nurturing relationships, not just with family but with friends and neighbors as well. He arranged regular gatherings at the ranch, established a fund to help miners' families during hard times, even reconciled with a former business rival. Life continued its inevitable march forward. Children grew up. The ranch expanded further. Lucas's hair turned completely silver, while Olivia discovered her first gray strands with a combination of dismay and pride. In the winter of 1900, as a new century dawned, they celebrated 25 years of marriage. Their children organized a surprise anniversary gathering that brought together friends from across Colorado. "I can't believe they kept this secret," Olivia whispered to Lucas as guests continued to arrive at the decorated barn. "Elizabeth can barely keep quiet about a new dress, let alone something this elaborate." Lucas laughed. "They've become quite the capable conspirators." "Wonder where they learned that." The celebration lasted well into the night. There was feasting and dancing, speeches and toasts. Old friends shared stories that made the younger generation alternately gasp and roar with laughter. Through it all, Lucas kept Olivia close, his arm around her waist, his eyes rarely leaving her face. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Donovan?" he asked formally when the musicians struck up a waltz. "Always," she replied, stepping into his arms as naturally as breathing. They moved across the floor with the ease of long familiarity, their bodies remembering the steps even as the years had changed them. 25 years, Lucas mused as they danced. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you stood on your porch, looking at me suspiciously." "I wasn't suspicious," Olivia protested, "just cautious. Rightly so, you were wise beyond your years." He twirled her gently. "I thank God every day that you took a chance on me, on us," she corrected. "We took a chance on us." Later, as the celebration wound down and guests began to depart, Lucas and Olivia stood together on the porch of their home. The winter night was clear and cold, stars scattered like diamonds across the black velvet sky. "It's been a good life, hasn't it?" Olivia asked, leaning against him. "The best," Lucas agreed, his arm tightening around her shoulders, "and still plenty more to come." "What do you want from the years ahead?" she asked curiously. Lucas considered for a moment. "Just this," he finally said, "more of this, watching our grandchildren grow, seeing the ranch flourish." "Growing old beside you," he kissed the top of her head. "What about you?" Olivia smiled. "I was thinking I might write our story for the children and grandchildren so they know how it all began, with a desperate woman and a presumptuous cowboy," Lucas teased. "With two people who found exactly what they needed in each other," she corrected gently. As they stood there in the quiet night, surrounded by the legacy they'd built together, Olivia remembered that moment so many years ago when she'd felt she had nothing left to give. How wrong she had been. She'd given Lucas her trust, her passion, her partnership, her love gifts that had returned to her multiplied beyond measure. And Lucas, The quiet cowboy who'd appeared on her porch that fateful evening had given her something equally precious. A chance to begin again, to build something lasting, to find strength she hadn't known she possessed. Their story, Olivia reflected, wasn't just about love, though that ran through it like a golden thread. It was about resilience, about seeing possibility where others saw only endings, about creating abundance from scarcity. Most of all, it was about the miracle that happens when two people commit to giving freely to each other, not from depletion, but from the ever-renewing wellspring of shared purpose and devotion. In the years that followed, the Donovan legacy continued to grow and evolve. James returned from veterinary school to revolutionize their breeding program with scientific methods that complemented Lucas's instinctive understanding of horses. Elizabeth and her husband established a neighboring ranch that specialized in cattle, creating a complementary business that strengthened both families. The younger children found their own paths, one as a teacher in Georgetown, another as a lawyer in Denver, who still returned regularly to help with the ranch's increasingly complex business affairs. Grandchildren came, filling the old ranch house with new energy and reminding Lucas and Olivia of those early days when their own children were small. Though they were now in their 60s, they remained active in the daily operations of the ranch, adapting to changing times while maintaining the principles that had guided them from the beginning. Olivia did indeed write their story, filling journals with memories and reflections. Sometimes Lucas would find her at the desk by the window, pen in hand, lost in recollection. "Getting it all down?" he would ask with a smile. "Trying to," she would reply, "though words can't quite capture it all." The changing world touched even their remote corner of Colorado. Automobiles began to appear on Georgetown's streets. Telephones connected the ranch to town. News of world events reached them more quickly through improved mail service and regular newspapers. Through it all, Lucas and Olivia remained constant to each other, their partnership the fixed point around which their expanding world revolved. They had disagreements. Of course, Lucas's occasional stubbornness clashing with Olivia's determination, but these moments passed quickly, dissolved by the deeper understanding they shared. In the spring of 1915, as war raged in Europe and America stood on the brink of involvement, Lucas fell ill with pneumonia. At 70, his body didn't fight off the infection as it once might have. For weeks, he lay in their bedroom, Olivia rarely leaving his side. "You should rest," he told her one evening, his voice weak but his eyes as alert as ever. "You'll make yourself sick too." "Nonsense," she replied, adjusting his pillows. "I'm stronger than I look. Don't I know it?" He caught her hand. "Olivia, I need to tell you something." Fear clutched at her heart. "You're not going anywhere, Lucas Donovan, not yet." A faint smile crossed his face, "Not planning to, but just in case." He paused, gathering strength. "I need you to know that loving you has been the great privilege of my life. Everything good I've accomplished has been because of you, because of what we built together." Tears filled her eyes. "Lucas, let me finish," he said gently. "Whatever happens, I want you to remember that, and to know that I'll be waiting for you wherever we go next." "That won't be necessary for a good long while," she insisted, wiping away tears. "You promised me at least 30 years, remember? We've only had 25. His eyes crinkled with amusement. "Always holding me to my promises." "Always," she agreed. Against the doctor's predictions, Lucas recovered, though more slowly than he would have liked. By summer, he was back on horseback, albeit for shorter rides and at a more sedate pace than before. Olivia kept a watchful eye on him, limiting his exertions despite his protests that she was mothering him worse than a hen with one chick. Their 50th anniversary arrived in 1925. By then, Georgetown had electricity, the ranch had a telephone, and their grandchildren drove automobiles. The celebration was quieter than their 25th. Just family gathered in the home that had sheltered generations. Lucas, now 80, still stood straight, though he used a cane when he thought no one was watching. Olivia, at 72, remained active in community affairs, particularly the library she'd helped establish decades earlier. As the family gathered around the long table that had witnessed so many gatherings, their eldest grandson proposed a toast. "To grandmother and grandfather," he said, raising his glass. Who taught us all what it means to build something that lasts, 50 years of partnership, perseverance, and love. Hear, hear, came the chorus of voices. Lucas looked at Olivia sitting beside him, her face lined with age but her eyes as bright and determined as when they'd first met. "What do you say, Mrs. Donovan?" he asked quietly. "Was it worth it, this life we chose?" Olivia's smile held all the warmth of their years together. "Every moment," she replied. "Every single moment." Later, as the youngest grandchildren played on the porch and the adults gathered in conversation groups throughout the house, Lucas and Olivia slipped away for a quiet moment in the garden Olivia had cultivated over the decades. "I was thinking about our beginning," Lucas said as they sat on the bench beneath the old apple tree. "About that evening when you had nothing left to give." Olivia nodded, remembering, "and you said you would give to me instead. Little did I know how much you would end up giving me." He gestured toward the house full of their descendants, the ranch that had flourished under their care. "All of this came from you, Olivia." "From us," she corrected gently. "That's what partnership means." Lucas nodded, acknowledging the truth of her words. "You know," he said after a moment, "for all the fortune we've built, all the success in family and respect, do you know what I'm most grateful for?" "What's that?" Olivia asked, though she thought she might know the answer. "That I had the courage to knock on your door that evening. That you had the courage to open it." He took her hand, his touch as reassuring now as it had been half a century before. Everything else flowed from that one moment. Olivia leaned against his shoulder, content in the knowledge that their story, while uniquely their own, offered a template for those who would follow a legacy not just of material success, but of values, resilience, and unwavering commitment. "I have nothing left to give," she had whispered in a moment of despair. "Then let me give to you instead," he had replied. And so they had continued for 50 years, each giving freely to the other, creating in that exchange something far greater than either could have achieved alone, a love that had transformed not just their own lives, but the lives of all who came within its generous circle.